I started listening to this higher intuition, I think is what we might call it, this higher self, and not the other voices. So I think it's the discernment of what voices you're listening to, because it's self-coaching at this point. So now you have to catch, you know the story of the white wolf and the black wolf? It's a beautiful, beautiful Cherokee story. A young boy is asking his grandfather about life, and the grandfather tells him, look, there are these two wolves. There's this black wolf and the white wolf. The black wolf is evil, he's nasty, he's mean, he's greedy, he's selfish. And the white wolf is beautiful and benevolent and kind and loving. And all I know is that the white wolf is going to win in this life. And the grandchild says, how do you know? How do you know which wolf will win? He said, because I'm only feeding the white wolf. Mm. I only started feeling the altruistic thoughts, the thoughts of service, of benevolence, of possibility. I started listening to other transformational breakthroughs when my fear-based mind came in and said, this is impossible, I can't get out of it, I've seen the x-rays. I've seen the MRIs, it's not possible. And all that shit comes in. And you have to incessantly keep shifting, right? It's neuroplasticity at its finest. And you go, no, white wolf, white wolf, white wolf. And you start building the new story. And then if you believe in that and you actually take action on that, you actually have new evidence that's real. And then I would write it down. Like, for example, I couldn't bend forward and stretch for the longest time. And this day I'm stretching and moving and breathing and doing Qigong, and I could reach all the way to my toes. And I write it down. I start journaling everything, document the journey. Because forgettery comes in. You're like jamming, life is amazing, and then something sideswipes you and you have forgettery. You forget that new identity that you were building because of the old. And I would open my book, my journal, I call my Buddha book. Buddha is a path of mastery. I'd open it and I'd read and I'd remember, and my cells would light back up. And I kept just retelling the story. So that was how it happened. And it's still that way. Because think about this, Ajit, how many books have been written about personal development? So many, right? Nobody needs to write the book, 5 Easy Steps to Destroy Your Life. 5 Easy Steps to Get into Depression. We got that, right? We need the other stuff.
Yeah.
Got to be incessant.
Yeah. So beautiful. I love that story of the white wolf and the black wolf. And it's so true to some of the work that we do here as well, where we talk about how you always have a choice of the thought that you're going to operate on. And you can always choose an empowered thought. That's what we call it. There's a thought, and then there's the empowered thought. Your default thought is always going to be the comfortable, the default that you've always done again and again and again. And so it's just comfortable. It's safe. Yeah. And then there's the empowered thought that will force you to change, but it will force you in a way that creates progress in your life. But also, I'm reflecting on this, and I don't know if this is true, so I want to ask you, is one of my beliefs is that a lot of times we guide life, and a lot of times we are guided to live. I almost feel that in that moment when you were crawling to the toilet, you were guided by universe, intuition, your higher self, your sensei, by retelling you the narratives that they have told you many times before, but this was the right time for universe to really, like, it was almost like universe was preparing you to hear it, because it knew at that time you needed to hear it. Do you believe in being guided by the universe?
Gazillion%. So now this conversation gets super juicy, right? Because there's an inner knowing. See, our whole journey of teaching, we call our system Satori Method. Satori is an awakening of your consciousness. I believe that you can hit this on 3 cylinders. There's that instinct in the body, right? We teach this in martial arts, to listen to the body. Gut instinct, right? Oh, you could tell. There's a book called The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. It's an excellent book where he interviews all these different women who had undergone different assaults, and he questions them to find out, when did you know the attack was going to happen? And they were like, I didn't know. And the further he would investigate, they were like, well, I had this feeling and I didn't listen to it. I overrode it, right? So I think you have that one. And Qigong is called the Dantian. It's the lower Dantian. It's your power center. So I think it's important for humans to develop a relationship with their breath and their power center. But then there's this inner knowing, and this is where it gets really juicy for me, because all my greatest transformations, even the healing of my back, happened from hands on heart, leaning into gratitude, listening. And for me, it's not a download. It's actually an upload. And there's an inner knowing, and my heart informs my mind. And I don't even know, it's like a language I'm learning how to read. But it's like there's a knowing and it's a feeling. It's a feeling of everything's okay, all is well. And that energy starts to up into the brain. You start going into brain heart coherence. And now your brain knows stuff. Call it intuition. I feel like intuition takes place here, and some people call them downloads. I got an idea. Our friend Joe Vitale goes, these downloads happen. They drop ideas on people, and who's listening? So I think if you can activate actually these three areas within, you got this very powerful internal system to know stuff. And that's where life gets super magical. So I'm 100% in alignment with that inner awakening and guidance.
Have you ever cared to ponder how to develop that inner awakening?
Every day.
Any insights, any cliff notes for our listeners
Lots.
today? Go for it.
Okay, here's my go-to. So for the longest time, my journey was personal development through the mind. And then it was through meditation, clearing my mind and getting into a receptive state. And that's still super important. But what I didn't know about physical movement was the right types of physical movement were actually opening me up so I could receive more information. So your human body is an instrument. And I think of it like a listening device, sort of like your ear. Inside your ear, you have the eardrum, which is a transducer. It takes frequencies from outside and it translates them so that your brain can turn them into language. And you're learning to turn those sounds into language that you can process and think. What if your human body was a transducer? And it is. You have a complete energy system, auric fields, things like this, and you can actually train the instrument to listen more. This whole universe, to me, energy is information. It's data, and it's the quality of your receiver that you can listen, just like tuning a radio. And you have different channels you can listen into. There's some pretty divine channels that we could tune into. So I say through the body, and the best way for me to tune the body is through the tissue. So a lot of people say, right, like my thoughts are in my head, but thoughts go into the body. Thoughts become feelings. Feelings get embodied in a cellular level. So your mind is also in your body. It's embedded. So it's body, mind, body. It's one. So if there's a mind in my body as well, what if I have these thoughts and feelings that are trapped in my tissues? Some people say issues are in the tissues. What if I could free that up and free my instrument more, and I'd be a better transducer and listener? Now I'm calibrating the energy in a whole other level. So when it comes to awakening, that's really my go-to. And that's the beauty of Qigong, is it opens the instrument. Now you're in a whole other level of listening. And this is where you start to notice things. A martial artist does that with his or her awareness of surroundings, but this is more internal. It's not just external. Now you go inside and you can feel things. So energy starts to flow and move, and once the energy gets free, from the yogic tradition, I think we understand that energy wants to rise. Mm-hmm. And as energy rises, you have higher and higher degrees of awareness or consciousness. But in a lot of humans, the energy gets trapped in the lower gates, the lower centers. Mm-hmm. And if you open the channels and then you learn how to actually activate through proper breathing and exercises the energy, now that the body temple is open and you're relieving and releasing some of the fear that's been in the tissue, I think what happens is the heart opens. See, if you were a heart and you had all this fear going on in your body, would you want to open the door and let that in? No, I wouldn't. Not if energy wants to rise. So the heart keeps stuff locked down. So if you can start to nourish and heal your physical body, I think your heart opens up and the energy rises and you start to have, in the Qigong world, they call it Shen. It's your inner glow. And this inner glow, and some systems call it your charisma, is where the light is coming out. And you see certain people, and what is it? You're like, they're so heart-centered. They're so beautiful. Now, here's one tip for a coach. Some of us have naturally figured out how to open our heart centers, and we became givers and helpers. It's our instinct. And now we go into the mode of giving and serving and sharing, but we forget to keep filling up our own lower power center, and we start to deplete our life force energy through just over serving. And if you take a yin and yang symbol and you go too far to one direction or the other, it flips. So you can go to strong, and you go too strong, you become weak. You go into softness, you go too soft, you become passive aggressive. If you don't take care of your own power, you'll start to get into a place of resentment and shut down. Happens with parents. So it's super important for self-care and take care of yourself and really take care of that power. But To me, that's the key to open the heart is through the body.